let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, we are live with Kent with Ben. What is 67? Is it 67?
Yes.
My goodness.
Yes,
that
it
is
is.
crazy, man. All right,
It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
So, this of course is American Hovind story. As we all know, Kent Hovind has his own little amusement park, similar to what might be seen in season 4 of American Horror Story. And just like in that one, it's got a body count. So, a lot of surprising similarities there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, we are here to start CSE 201 Video 3. And I found a version of this where Kent has actually recorded this, not in just some back room with a poster, but instead in like an office. So it's a nicer presentation. There's a little bit more editing, apparently. And of course, it's coming to us in glorious, crisp 360p. Because of course it is. But before we get into that, I want to say hello. Well, we got a channel member saying hi in the chat. We got Caleb, who is a brand new channel member. Welcome to the members. If anyone here wants to go ahead and become a channel member, you can. Link is down below. It's right next to the subscribe button. Let's see. Oh, Vernal Bead had to get stitches on Sunday. Well, I hope you're doing a lot better. And Dictonic says, you need to do something fun for Kent with Ben 69. Well, yeah, we're going to do something fun for all of them.
Yeah, but something extra special fun.
Well, stay tuned. Let's see. Before we go into this, we're going to go over the quick rules, because we got rules for drinking to help our brains not overload. So first, we drink whenever we hear from the kaiju. Usually it's Godzilla or Mothra, although also this includes if you super chat with one of the emojis that I have for channel members, that'll cause a drink too. So if you want us to drink, be a channel member and you can pay like $1 and make us drink. Oh, there's Godzilla. First drink of the night.
What?
Oh, hello, Beats of the Heart, Lyrics of the Soul. I'm probably going to shorten your name to Beats, no offense, because the whole thing every time is a lot.
I'm going to shorten it to Of the Heart, Lyrics of the Soul.
Okay, there you go. We got Smitty. I don't think I recognize Cuddly Unicorn, but hi all from I believe that's New Zealand, where it is, what is it, 1 p.m. or something tomorrow in New Zealand. So we drink also whenever Kent gets something just so wrong we kind of have to, which we do a lot. We also drink whenever he gets something right that he didn't just, like, quote from something. We also take drinks for stories that didn't happen. We call it, conversations that didn't happen, stuff like that. Because Kent tells a lot of those stories where you're just like, I don't think this conversation ever actually happened. We also take drinks for Kent's jokes that don't land, as well as sometimes if someone predicts something, we can make that, like, if the prediction comes true, make it a drink trigger. But yeah.
Not as good as that one.
Well, I think that basically sums it up. So let's get into this. Here we go.
Well, thank you for joining us. This is our third class in creation.
Oh, I forgot to give my little thing. We here at Dapper Dino don't actually encourage you to play along. If you do, you do so at your own risk. We accept no liability for any kind of bodily injury, harm to property, death, destruction, mayhem, criminal acts, or anything else that might happen as a result of you playing along with the drinking game. And also, we are very, very supportive of people who want to play along with non-alcoholic beverages. There you go. Sorry.
That's what I do. I do non-alcoholic beverages, so
yeah,
you can too if you want to.
Are you telling me that's not just a gigantic glass of vodka?
I hope not.
Goodness, you would be dead.
In Science Evangelism 201. If you have any questions, just raise your hand or say, stop me in the middle of class. Hey, I don't understand that. We'll talk about it. There are 3 laws of thermodynamics. Okay, very few people have ever heard of the third one. I don't remember it. It doesn't matter. So
I will be honest, I have heard of it, but I also do not remember the third law of thermodynamics. It's the one that almost never comes up. I remember 3 laws of thermodynamics: the zeroth, first, and second. And those are the only ones. But you know what? Kent is right about all of that, so I'm going to take a drink. He is right that there are, well, there aren't 3, there are 4, but the 4th one is labeled zeroth, so I'm going to give it to him. And also, he's right that almost no one knows about the 3rd one, so I'm going to take a drink for that. Oh, it's a whole glass of gin that you got there, Bent.
That I won't comment on.
one of those minor things is not a big deal. But the first law tells us matter cannot, that would be matter / and or energy, cannot be created or destroyed by any known means. How can you create matter from nothing or create energy from nothing? So far, no one has discovered any possible way to do that. Which brings up the obvious question, well then how did the universe get here?
I agree. It does actually bring up that question, and I think it's a good question, and that was a reasonable stating of the first law in the sense of, like, a colloquial statement of it. Obviously, because it's a law, there is an actual equation that goes with it, but I think that's a fair description for a lay audience. So I'm going to take a drink. I agree with Kent so far. It does raise that question.
It had to have a beginning.
No. There's no actual reason that the universe had to have a beginning. So, for instance, the state prior to the initial expansion of the universe could have simply been a state that the universe was in for however long. There could be some kind of cycle. There's a lot of options that don't result in the universe having a beginning. Now, I actually happen to think that the Big Bang seems to imply a beginning, and so I actually do think it probably does, but it's not required to.
I don't understand the math behind it because in my brain it's like the idea of time and space-time, like you can't really have time without events happening, and I don't see how events were happening in a singularity, so like that's when time began. So I don't know what the math says, and I'm not trying to make any dogmatic statements about it, but I'm like, yeah, I don't really understand that, like how it could not have been a beginning.
Yeah.
The Big Bang, I'm saying. I don't understand why Kent wouldn't use that as evidence for a creation event, except for the fact that it's way too long ago in his mind. It's longer than 6,000 years ago, so like, but instead of being even crazier, like, wouldn't it make more sense to try and prove that the Big Bang happened 6,000 years ago? I mean, that's still crazy, but
it's less crazy. Yeah, it might actually be
it's
less crazy.
I think it's less crazy because at least you're acknowledging that the Big Bang is a thing. You know, he doesn't do that, or he doesn't acknowledge that it's a real event.
Yeah. All right.
We know that matter is not eternal. It can't last forever. It's always breaking down. We'll get into.
Wait, you just said it was eternal, Kent. He just now he said that matter can't be created or destroyed. So matter can't break. Drinking for a contradiction.
I don't think he understands what he said.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think that Kent actually knows.
Well, a contradiction, but
like if you were to say, "Hey, Kent, which of these particles," and you were to give him like the standard models particle zoo, which ones of these are matter? I don't think you could do any better than chance at picking out which ones are matter.
Do protons decay? Well, Kent will tell you. He's got an answer.
Apparently, yes, because of the second law of thermodynamics, which has nothing to do with proton decay.
That in a minute.
Well, then I shouldn't put that. I shouldn't put those words in his mouth because.
Wow.
I know I'm just teasing him and all that, but he didn't actually say that. So
fair.
Yeah.
This law of thermodynamics is really powerful proof against the evolution theory.
Nothing to do with the creation of matter or energy out of nothing, or from a pre-existing state or anything like that has anything to do with the theory of evolution. I'm going to take a drink. Kent, you're thinking of cosmogenesis, and evolution has no bearing on cosmogenesis. And cosmogenesis has no bearing on evolution, except that the universe has to be here for evolution to happen. But exactly how it got to its current state is pretty much immaterial for evolution, provided that it gets to its current state. Oh, and hello, Caleb Dark, another one of my channel members. I always like the channel members because I drew all the little icons for them, like the little green tetrapod and the top hats of various colors and whatnot. So it's I get to appreciate my own pixel art.
Yeah.
Matter cannot be created or destroyed, which leaves us two logical choices. Somebody made this world, and that somebody would have to be outside of time, space, matter. Now, unrelated to them, unconnected to them, uninfluenced by them, outside of time, space, matter, or the world made itself. The only other possible choice is what some of the idiots will say, well, we're not really here at all, we just think we're here, okay?
Or what if something outside the universe that isn't personal made it? It doesn't have to be somebody, it could be something. For instance, if, say, like, the inflaton field is a real thing, which is a hypothesis in physics right now that has to do with how big bangs might occur, and there might be multiple pocket universes all across this much larger region of space-time that we're unable to directly interact with, but that, you know, because of the properties of this inflaton field, keeps expanding, and occasionally, you know, universes spring up within it. That's not a personal thing, and it would create the universe, and it would be outside of the universe, at least our little pocket universe. But yeah, so see, there's more options than those two, and Kent wants to set up a dichotomy because he thinks that anytime he can poke a hole in one option, it will mean that the other option automatically becomes more likely. But since those aren't the only two options, that's not how it works. So Carrie Bronson for $5 says, please let him commit the Holmesian fallacy? I'm going to go with Holmesian fallacy with a silent E. Not sure I'm familiar with that one.
The Sherlock Holmes fallacy, process of elimination fallacy, a logical fallacy that occurs when some explanation is believed to be true on the basis that alternate explanations are impossible. Yet not all alternate explanations have been ruled out. I think that has to do with like when they say it's deduction, Watson, even though it's actually not deduction, it's inductive logic, which is useful, but not like foolproof.
Yeah.
So
the Venerable Bede says, is it true that black holes can eventually stop existing? Yes, they will all eventually stop existing through Hawking radiation, which is a mechanism that I am not equipped, nor do I have the time to try to explain.
I've heard a whole lot of bad explanations of Hawking radiation, and I've heard, in my opinion, only one good one, and that is on a channel called The Science Asylum on YouTube.
Oh, there you go. Check out
and I'm going to give that guy a shout out. I don't even know. It's like probably a really old one, an old explanation, but he has like 3 really good questions at the beginning. And I'm like, I remember having one of those and no other explanation answered it. I'm not going to get into the details, but
yeah.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's called evaporation. Black holes evaporate.
Yeah. Although
Hawking radiation.
At the very end of their evaporation, it's much more like an explosion. But here we go.
Yeah.
So you can forget about that choice. We're here, all right? So somebody made the world, or the world made itself. Now the Bible very clearly says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. It gives no explanation for where God came from. I get asked the question all the time in debates. They'll say, where did God come from? I say, well, your question...
I've never heard him be asked this question in a debate, and I've watched a lot of Kent Hovind debates, including really old ones. I'm drinking for conversations that never happened.
I'm sure people have asked. I'll drink, but like I'm sure maybe not.
Look,
his answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
And
it's very rare that you come across...
That's a reasonable answer. Is if you believe in God, where does God come from? I don't know.
Yeah. It's very rare that you come across an atheist or agnostic who's like, well, where did God come from? Because most of them realize that part and parcel with various God claims is the idea of, self-existence, and that it's sort of a category error to ask that question, because, most of them are at least that smart. Not all of them, probably. But I've never heard him be asked this in a debate, and I have seen... Let's just say this. It's been years since I've seen a Kent Hovind debate that I hadn't already seen. And I've watched a lot. Yeah. So
assumes that he had to come from somewhere. Doesn't it? What if he has just always been? But even the word always, you can't really use that in describing God because that implies time. You know, any words that imply time would be improper when you apply them to God. You know, where does God live? Well, just the where word implies that he has to have a particular location. He's stuck in space. Time, space, matter are three things that we are stuck in. But if God is limited by time, space, matter, or anything else, he's not God. Whatever you're thinking of, it's not God you're thinking of. You're thinking of something else, okay? So the Bible simply says, in the beginning God did it. It does not tell us where God came from. It does not tell us how he did it. He just did it. Created the heaven and the earth. If you can get past that verse, the rest of it's easy. The whole rest of the book is easy. All 31,700 some verses, whatever there are. The rest is easy, okay?
I mean, I've read it. I don't think all of it's easy, but I mean, I guess that's a subjective opinion. I don't know.
Look, the book of Romans is considered by a lot of people some pretty brilliant philosophical writing. I don't know if that's I remember reading a source. I don't remember if it was biased as a Christian source, or I hate using the term secular source, but you know, there's some difficult stuff to understand in there, right? And some pretty deep stuff that'll make you think. So I don't think the rest of it is easy as Ken says, especially when he gets so much of it wrong.
Yeah.
So much of it wrong.
Maybe it is easy if you're willing to just come up with whatever interpretation pops into your head first and then just go with it. Maybe that is easy.
That's interesting, and I have no problem accepting that. But I do understand how some people do. Because in their little brain, they've limited everything to what, if I can understand it, you know, then it's true. Well, there's a lot of things you can't understand that we accept as true, okay? Humanists, according to the Humanist Manifesto...
I actually do agree with Kent there. There are plenty of things that you're
good
probably
advice,
never
Kent.
going to understand that are still true. But yeah, like Ben said, maybe he should work on finding some of those things in science and then believing them.
Well, I mean, I said that's good advice, Kent, but like, did he actually give the advice that's logical, that follows, in my opinion, which is like, maybe you trust the experts then?
No, I don't think he explicitly said that.
Maybe you trust the evidence? You know, that would be a good idea, Kent.
Oh, yeah, Silver Harlow, when you were 15, I agree. But when you were 15, you probably weren't having, like, debates with professional Christian apologists as a non-believer. And when I say atheists don't generally ask this, I usually, what I mean is people who are engaged in actual dialogue about things like philosophy with believers.
If you're trying to ask the question because you're curious, okay. If you're using it like in a debate, I don't think it's a good tactic.
Yeah,
you could do better.
If you're going to debate something, you should already be familiar with your opponent's position.
And like, you know, a young earth creationist shouldn't ask like, well, where does abiogenesis come from? Which is probably how they would phrase it. Right? It would be an equally stupid question.
Okay.
Manifesto number 1. Now, there are actually two Humanist manifestos, one written 1930 and one written 1973. And I believe there's now a third one. Is there, Jonathan? Do you know about a third Humanist manifesto? I think there was. The Humanists got together and said, we need to tell what do we believe? The Humanist Manifesto 1 says, humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Actually, if you look at the actual manifesto up in the upper right corner, they have the different planks of the Humanist Manifesto. It says, first, religious humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. They admit and have all...
Are you sure it doesn't say secular humanists? Because religious humanists would be people who have a religion and are also humanists. Because you can remember, humanism is basically an ethical framework, right? It's not itself a religion on its own. Humanism is the idea that what you ought to do as a human is to do the things that promote human flourishing. And unless you're a secular humanist, that doesn't necessarily imply that you don't believe in God or gods or whatever else, right? You can be a Christian humanist if you try to act in a way that promotes human flourishing in a way that corresponds with humanist philosophy, while also believing in Jesus. Like, that's a thing you could do. Now, I don't think there are very many people that do it, but you can, and I'm sure there must be some. So I think Kent misspoke there when he said religious humanists, but maybe not, because I do know some people who would identify their religion as humanism, which I think is inaccurate, but like I said when we were discussing, various other definitions, I'm not really going to tell people how they have to self-identify, but there you go.
Always admitted, as far as I know, that humanism is a religion. See, atheism is a religion.
No, it is not. Let's take a drink, and then we're gonna talk about that. So, religion is a complicated thing, and despite claims to have defined it reasonably well, I don't actually think that too many people have. So, for instance, we have some people who say that it's a faith-based belief that somehow some part of the self will continue on after death, and practices associated with it. But the thing is that there are religions out there that don't believe in an afterlife. There aren't too many that still are around, but historically that's been a lot of religions actually have been sort of either silent on or think that it was unlikely there was any kind of afterlife. And I've encountered people in real life who do believe in gods, but not an afterlife. So that's probably not going to cut it. But basically, religions tend to be a set of beliefs, practices, and the people who believe and practice those things centered around some kind of superhuman entities or forces that are beyond the physical world, right? So you have animist religions where they believe that various features of nature, animals, land formations, oceans, rivers, streams, whatever, have spirits that can influence the world and ought to be propitiated and sought for guidance and whatnot. You have theistic religions which believe that there's a god or gods that rule the universe. You have more philosophical religions like Buddhism who believe that there's some kind of spiritual substance, essentially, that makes up human beings, and that you're in this wheel of rebirth because every time you die, that essence kind of flows out of you and then seeks a new body to inhabit and will rearrange itself into that new body, which becomes essentially a new person, but still based on all the, spiritual substance that made you up. There's a whole host of things, but atheism isn't any of these things. Atheism is the explicit rejection of gods, and that's it. It's not a set of beliefs beyond that. It's certainly not a set of practices. There are no rituals. And while some groups of atheists group themselves together, it takes more than just having a group of people who identify in a particular way to make a religion. So there is no definition under which religion under which atheism falls, unless it is basically just something that's important to you. But in that case, we get things like, your favorite football team might be your religion if we're going to go that far. And I know some people act like it might be their religion, but it isn't.
Despite what people might think, I'm pretty passionate about my favorite football team.
Is your religion your favorite football team?
It's not my religion, but
Okay.
I'm pretty passionate about it.
All right. Hey, how about this? Anyone who would say that atheism is their religion, put religious atheist in the chat. If you wouldn't say that, then continue to chat as normal.
You would have to believe there is no God. There's no way you could know something like that.
So I do agree that saying that there is not a God is a belief, obviously. But I don't actually know that it's impossible to have that knowledge. I don't think I could have that knowledge, but I wouldn't rule it out as like an epistemological impossibility. I think it's possible that in some universe, some possible world, you could have sufficient evidence for the non-existence of God and for God to not exist that you could have justified true belief that God does not exist. I think it's possible. I'm not sure it's practical. I'm not sure anyone is really ever going to get there, but I wouldn't rule it out as being just like epistemologically impossible. I don't know. But
I don't know how it would be possible. Because I think of it as like, can you disprove the flying spaghetti monster? No.
Well,
Can you disprove
I
a
probably
God?
can't. I probably can't. But
If I could prove that this universe were created by some non-God higher power, I couldn't prove that hadn't been created by a God. right? So like
Yeah. It would
you know.
certainly be a very difficult thing to disprove.
But I
if it were
also
possible.
couldn't prove a God if God exists, which I do believe God exists, but I can't prove it. Like even if I saw God, it could be a hallucination. So I could never prove it.
Maybe it is
You
impossible.
know?
I don't know. I would have to think about it more. But that's probably not the
Well,
main point.
I can't. I'm not saying it's.
Yeah.
I don't make that claim that it's truly impossible, but I think it is.
Brian Blackburn says he just equated belief with knowledge. I think. Well, actually, you know what? Let's go back a few seconds and see if he did. I'm not sure he did.
They admit, and have always admitted, as far as I know, that humanism is a religion. See, atheism is a religion. You would have to believe there is no God.
Okay.
There's no way you could know something like that.
No, I think he's distinguishing them. He's saying you have to believe it because you can't know it. I think is the claim he's making. Although if you know something, you also believe it, but we'll leave that aside for now.
How could you possibly know there's no God? That's something you believe. You take that on faith. So Humanist Manifesto says humanists regard the universe as self-existing and not created. Now, oftentimes...
So because you can't know there's no God, you have to believe it on faith. And therefore it's a religion. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
So then he would be... it's not really... He doesn't believe in the flying spaghetti monster, right? So he's an atheist when it comes to that. Like it's just a stupid way to define things.
Yeah.
Because it's not useful and it doesn't help anything.
Textbooks, they will have the word universe capitalized. Why do you capitalize a word? If it's the beginning of a sentence, if it's a proper name, or if it's deity.
That's on the quiz next week, guys.
Yep. And there's also a few others, like, beginning of a sentence, titles, the genus name in a binomial in scientific, classification systems. But Kent's mostly right. That was some pretty good efforts. I'll take a drink for Kent basically getting capitalization right. Now, if only I could get the people who submit things for my speculative evolution program to listen to that part of Kent's speech. I actually had someone go through and edit some of my some of the submissions I got just to fix the capitalization for me before I got to them, because I was taking hours just sitting there fixing capitalization.
Deify the universe.
No, you can't. No, you're not deifying the universe, Kent, because remember, you just said they believe that God doesn't exist. If they believe the universe is God, then they believe God exists. So they're not deifying the universe. Maybe they're using it like a proper noun, since there's only one of them, at least that we know of.
Just self-existing. Well, if the universe is just self-existing, how did it get here? Well, they've thought about this.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to take a drink. Kent, that question is dumb for the same reason it's dumb to ask it of God, because you conceive of God as self-existent, therefore he does not need to come from somewhere. Similarly, if the universe is self-existent, it doesn't need to come from somewhere. Come on, Kent. You know better than this. I know he knows better than this.
I remember being a kid when I was a YC until early 30s or something like that. So when I was a kid, I remember like using that reasoning, like, wait, no, because people would ask that, like, and I'm like, look, the universe doesn't claim to be like self-existing, because my knowledge at the time was that it just claimed to have a big bang. God claimed to be eternal and always existing, and I don't think it was a great argument for a kid. Maybe it was, but I hate that as a kid I would have been able to out-argue Kent Hovind.
And yet,
if I just didn't agree with him,
right.
I didn't know any better, so I did agree with him. But like, I don't like that. I don't like that children could. Never mind. Yeah. That's gonna make me mad when I just think of that.
Okay.
This for a long time, and finally, the devil years ago came up with an idea called the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, it was definitely the devil and not a Catholic priest.
How many have ever heard of the Big Bang Theory before? I was on an airplane
I have to
years
drink
ago.
Because that's just such a annoying lie. I don't know if we need a new rule. Like, well, that's a blatant lie.
I mean, hey, whatever.
Look, the drinking. I'll call it it's so wrong I have to drink.
Well, that is already one of the rules.
Yeah, I'll call it.
Okay.
That'll be under that category.
Yeah. Plus,
a subset of that is blatant lie.
The drinking rules are more suggestions guidelines.
They're guidelines. They're not rules. Yeah.
In my seminar part 1 about how I was sat next to a professor from Berkeley University. We're flying out to San Francisco, the land of the fruits and the flakes. And I'm sitting next to this professor from Berkeley, UCal
I already
Berkeley,
drank 'cause it
the
didn't
most
happen.
hostile audience on planet Earth. Berkeley is a very interesting place for numerous reasons, okay? This university turns out more liberals and humanists, it's incredible, than any other university I'm aware of. But Berkeley teaches there are no rules. There's
I'm gonna need a citation on that one. Somehow,
I'll look it up.
I think there are rules at UCal Berkeley. Not sure.
There are no rules.
No rules.
simply are no rules. So one guy came to class every single day for 8 months straight, stark naked.
Okay, first, classes in college don't last for 8 months typically. They last for a semester. And yeah, I don't think that happened. So that's going to be another citation needed.
They couldn't tell him it's wrong because, no such thing as wrong.
I mean, I would agree that it's not immoral to show up to class naked. Like, I don't place any particular moral premium on nudity.
They have a lot of rules.
Do they have rules?
They have a lot of rules.
Oh, weird.
It's so weird.
Wait,
you can't plagiarize? What?
They have a rule against plagiarism?
I didn't actually read that. I just assume they do because
yeah.
all
schools have
colleges
rules.
should.
Yeah.
Mine did.
So I'm pretty sure that Berkeley has some rules, Kent. Even the best I can give for this story is maybe that this happened because the school didn't technically have a rule about nudity, and neither did the city, perhaps. And so there was technically no, code of conduct violation or crime happening. That's at least barely possible.
Nobody wanted to sit in the chair after he left, but I mean, it's just what a place. I mean, if you've never been to Berkeley, it's quite the place. I've been there a couple times. I spoke with her once for 10 hours, and boy, did we! Q&A time was incredibly lively. One Chinese kid who had come to when I spoke up in University of Guelph in Canada, and really got upset with me because he believes in evolution. When I was speaking at Berkeley, he's now, I guess, I don't know if a student there, a teacher there or something. But here I am talking away about lies in the textbooks, and all of a sudden I see another...
Remember when this started out on a plane, and now he's giving a speech at Berkeley?
Yeah, because it didn't happen.
Yeah,
Because he wasn't on a...
Take another drink.
He may have been on a plane, but he didn't have that conversation.
This is the thing that didn't happen.
Video projector start shooting pictures on top of my picture. Trying to block out what I'm showing. It's this Chinese guy in the back row brought his own video projector and laptop, and he's going to shoot, I said, sir,
I don't
if you want to
this.
speak,
I don't
get your
think
own
this
crowd, get your own room, have them invite you to come speak, or go rent your own hall.
I love that this started out on a plane, and now Kent, without any transition, is in a classroom. Because Kent's stories like this are just made up, and a lot of them start in planes. But this time, he forgot that that's how he started the story, so he went into a fake lecture story. That's amazing.
He was in a plane over Berkeley. Yeah, just circling.
Giving a
Looking for a
presentation,
runway.
apparently.
He was probably flying, really.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure Kent Hovind is a licensed pilot. Or no,
you don't need a license.
He rejects the need for licensure, so he's an unlicensed pilot.
And the Wright brothers didn't have a license, and they flew.
That's true.
Speak to whoever wants to come. But they invited me, and I'll shut that thing off. And he did. But Berkeley's a strange place. I could go there every day. I love that type of environment. I don't know what it is about me, but I thrive on that. Because I know I've got the truth. I know I'm right. It's really fun. It was scary at first, but it's fun now. But I spoke at Berkeley twice, last 2 years ago for 2.5 hours. It's debate number, which debate number is that, Jonathan? 19 or 20? 18. Berkeley finally hears the truth. We videotaped it out there. Boy, they were...
All right, guys. Debate 18. Find it. And if there's no Chinese guy with his own projector and laptop, let me know.
We're upset. Some of those guys were so upset. Poor Skip Evans, works for the National Center for Science Education. All four of them, he was really upset with me. But I'm going to win him to the Lord. I really don't hold animosity toward these atheists, They're just simply blinded.
That's why he now hosts a weekly show called Whack an Atheist. No malice, no ill will. Just let's just whack him.
His views evolved to the 7th type of evolution.
Okay, there you go. Oh.
You don't get mad at a blind person because they can't see, you know.
I
They're
agree.
blinded.
I'll take a drink. That's correct. You should not get mad at blind people for being blind.
Good advice, Kent. I'll stop doing that.
Okay. So all you guys who are angry at all the blind people for not being able to see, stop it.
They really are willingly ignorant. And so it's something that I,
Blind
as a Christian,
people?
have to say,
No, the atheists.
No, I know. It was a joke.
But now
I made a joke and no one laughed. So.
Oh. But now the problem is that we get the disanalogy here, because with very few exceptions, people aren't choosing to be blind. Right? But now he's saying that all the atheists, because remember, anyone who disagrees with him is an atheist, according to Kent. But now all the quote-unquote atheists are willingly ignorant. So it's not just they're blind, they're closing their eyes. And you can get mad at someone for, bumping into things and causing a ruckus because
they
can't
refuse
see.
to open their
Yeah,
eyes?
because their eyes are closed, right? Like
Because they refuse to. Like, if they can't open their eyes somehow,
yeah, sure. That's
I
fine.
wouldn't hold it against them.
But if you're choosing to stumble around with your eyes closed or blindfolded, getting into trouble, yeah, I can be mad at you for that because it's dumb. Don't do that.
I could see Kent doing that.
I mean, he basically is.
No, I mean literally, like for
Oh.
fun.
Yeah.
Just walking around bumping into things. That's fun.
Just watch
can
out
see
for that
you.
lake, Kent.
okay, how can I help these people see the light? Get them to see the light. But I'm sitting next to this Berkeley professor.
Oh, I know how.
On the airplane.
Stop lying about the Bible.
And everything else.
Love your neighbor as yourself, and stop lying about God. That's a good start.
Yeah.
And we started talking about creation and evolution. By the way, you'll find talking about creation and evolution is easy to get a conversation started.
So wait, now he's back on the plane? Okay, sure.
And I do this several times a week on airplanes, as I'm always flying somewhere. Tomorrow morning I fly to Pennsylvania. And last week was in Ontario, Canada, and next week, I don't know, somewhere else. But it's very easy to get a conversation started on creation or evolution. And that right away leads straight into the gospel. Because if there's a creator, well then, he's the boss. Okay? You find
I
out
just
what he
gotta
says
say,
and you
if
do
I'm
it.
ever on a
It's
plane,
real
I
simple.
hope I sit next to Ken Hovind. I would love having these conversations with him.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
But this professor started talking.
I don't know if he's allowed to fly anymore.
And I asked him what he did. He said, a professor at Berkeley. I said,
He doesn't need permission.
I taught
He just
science
needs a
15
plane, right?
That's a good point, yeah.
years. We got into the subject of the Big Bang, okay? And I said, how did the universe get here? He said, well, it came from the Big Bang. I said, well, man, I'd like to hear about this. And he was shocked. He said, you're a science teacher? You've never heard of the Big Bang?
Yeah, it is actually kind of shocking. But again, this didn't happen, so I'm going to take a drink.
I said, oh, yes, I've heard a
Why do
lot
you
about the
drink
Big Bang. And I believe in the Big Bang, but my Big Bang is quite a bit different than yours. I said, you tell me about your Big Bang, and then I'll tell you about my Big Bang. So he said, well, I believe about 18 or 20 billion years ago.
No. Nope, not 18 to 20. That's
No,
quite a bit
18
off.
or 20.
It's not either of those. It's like 13.
0.78 or something like that.
Yep. So
13
already,
is fine.
if this conversation happened, it wasn't with a professor of cosmology or anything.
Well, it might depend on when, because I don't remember the timeline of that estimate being changed. Because
That's fair, yeah.
I
Okay.
think it could just be from watching Kent when he quotes books from like 80 years ago. So yeah, you might be right, but I don't know how long science had it down to like 13.8 or 13.78 versus like 14 or 15,
Yeah.
They always start off, looking off into space, billions of years ago, kind of lost in space, look on their face, And that's what the textbook says, like this guy here in Prentice Hall General Science. 18 to 20 billion years ago. That's a long time.
See, the fact that you're scientist man on a plane is using the exact same phrasing as a science textbook from 1992 made for babies is one of the reasons why I don't believe this conversation happened. Because typically professors don't happen to accidentally quote kids' textbooks. Eric, the Tyrannoceratops, says, my next semester of college begins tomorrow. I'm going to be studying about mineralogy. Wish me the best of luck. Well, good luck, Eric, the Tyrannoceratops. Everybody give Eric a wish for good luck in his studies. He's working on becoming a paleontologist, if memory serves. And it is busy.
Good luck,
All
Eric.
the matter in the universe. That's a lot of stuff. And the word universe comes from two Latin words, uni, which means single, and verse is a spoken sentence.
Okay. Wrong. It comes from universo, which means something that's unrolled. Because the idea is that the stars are unrolled across the sky because, you know, we're hearkening back to a literal dome. Which, I'll grant you, in the classical period, the Romans didn't believe in a dome over the earth. But that doesn't mean that a lot of their etymologies don't reflect that as a previous belief.
In English, we have verse and prose. Verse is a spoken sentence, and prose is, poetry that rhymes.
That is exactly the opposite. I'm taking a drink.
I don't know better, but my understanding of prose is that you just write whatever you want to write.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's just writing with no particular concern for how it's going to sound together.
I learned that freshman year of college when I had to write a paper for a television criticism class.
Yep.
And the professor's like, don't use prose, use MLA standards. And I was like, I needed to look what that means.
That's a weird thing.
Because my high school didn't have that because it was a private school.
MLA is actually a standard for prose, so it's a weird thing for him to say. But
I don't remember how she phrased it, but it was follow this exact guideline.
But yeah, prose is basically when you're not concerned about the meter or rhyme scheme or assonance or vowel harmony or anything like that. You're just writing out the way you would normally have a conversation in whatever register you're using. So it might be really, academic register or formal register, whatever, but it's just not poetry. Verse is for poetry. So Kent has just the basics of writing. This is the first thing to know about writing after how the alphabet works. He's got that swapped.
So, universe is a single spoken sentence.
No, and verse in terms of writing also doesn't have to be spoken, although it's designed to be spoken, so yeah.
That's interesting. God said, let there be light. There has been interesting research done in the last 50 years on exactly what is light, exactly what is matter. What is the material world? I don't think anybody knows for sure yet. We can say, well, it's made up of atoms. Okay, I understand. Okay, and then the atoms are made up of electrons, neutrons, and protons, and maybe some other stuff in there. Okay, I understand. What are they made up of? Could it be that the whole thing is actually light energy or sound energy?
What? No, because it's not made of photons, and sound energy is energy that is an emergent from matter that already exists moving around in a particular way. It can't be made of sound if sound is a movement of matter, right? It doesn't. No. What? Oh my goodness! I don't even know how to deal with that besides just taking a drink. And also, normal matter, like the stuff that you see every day, the stuff that's made up of chemicals, is protons, neutrons, and electrons. Anything else that's out there, like photons or leptons or muons or whatever, aren't actually a part of the composition of physical objects you interact with every day. You don't have like a brick of muons hanging out. That's just not how it works. Oh, and what they're made of. Well, electrons are almost certainly a fundamental particle, so they are just, that's it. It's an electron. It's made of electron. And protons and neutrons are made of quarks, which themselves seem like fundamental particles. So
they've done studies where they take high energy sound and hit a glass of water and it lights up.
Yeah, sonoluminescence is really cool. But I don't see what it has to do with the idea that matter is made of sound, because you can make matter light up with sound. Like that's not how anything works.
So God simply spoke the universe into existence. That's a powerful thought. Several times in Genesis 1 it says, and God said, let there be, let there be, let there be. So the word universe means a spoken sentence, and we actually live in a spoken sentence.
Goodness.
This is it. You're living in the middle of it.
Cosmic microwave background radiation. That's what that is. That's the sound waves.
Never mind that it's photons.
Never mind that it's photons.
Yeah. Okay.
A spoken sentence. How many saw the movie The Matrix? You know, where the whole thing is nothing but imagination and dots, O's and ones. You know, it's an imaginary world.
O's and ones.
It doesn't.
I'm gonna let that slide because Kent is.
That's fine. I'm not gonna drink for it.
Yeah.
Exist. I like the one where the little kid is, he's looking at the spoon and it's bending back and forth, and the other guy comes in, he tries to bend the spoon back and forth, and the little kid says, oh, that's not the exciting thing. Wait till you realize there is no spoon. It's all imagination. What if everything
The Matrix is a great movie.
Yeah. No argument.
Is a manifestation of the voice of God. God said, let there be. When he speaks, the universe is created. When he speaks, the dead come to life. When he speaks, the wind quits blowing, the waves lay down. I mean, everything obeys the voice of God. Except us. He's having a little trouble out of us
but
right
is
now.
it because of the sound God makes when he speaks? Or is it because God is an all-powerful entity?
Well, how did God say, let there be light before there was air for him to say it into?
So,
maybe we shouldn't take it too literally.
I don't think you should take that too literally, Kent.
Yeah.
Even if God did say it in a heavenly expanse with air for him, that isn't our universe. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that the Bible says and God said it.
Kent's emphasis on literalism takes to the point where, even something that's an obvious metaphor here, which speech, is still going to see something he's going to take literally. And the thing is, I'm not... Look, we all know that the Genesis account cannot be a literal account of the history of the world. But even if you take it as the author's intending it for it to be so, I really don't think they meant to take the "and God said" part super literally.
But he's going to fix that here one of these days. Every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father, coming soon to a city near you. But all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region.
Yeah, that means we can't take a drink, because it was just absurd, and I laughed. Oops.
It may have been much smaller than a period on this page. All the matter in the universe, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't even squeeze a Volkswagen into a dot smaller than a period on a page.
Not as a Volkswagen, but you could do it if you were to, say, have all that mass be converted into energy, because there's no particular limit as to how much energy can exist within any given volume of space that we know of.
It's been estimated that if you took a freight train that is a mile long, a 1 mile long freight train, if you could compact it into solid matter, and then take that solid matter and remove all the space between the neutrons, protons, and electrons. See, the atoms are mostly space.
That's right. That's true. Take a drink. Atoms are mostly space.
I don't know if that's considered true anymore, but I could be wrong.
Oh,
I might be confusing something. I might be confusing the electrons don't orbit around the nucleus. They're more like a probability thing.
Yeah, they have a little probability cloud.
And both the things I said might be true. I don't remember.
If you could really get solid matter, it's estimated a freight train a mile long would fit in a thimble.
Okay.
But it would weigh as much as the freight train.
Yes.
Now, of course, that's physically impossible to do such a thing, but...
Well, yes and no, right? So, you can't physically just actually remove all the space in an atom and then have it exist, right? But what you can do is there are certain circumstances in which you can convert matter to energy via various processes and decay and whatnot, right? And then that amount of energy could be in any, in a volume of any given size, right? So can you reduce this freight train into a thimble as normal matter? No. But could it be, like, say, strange matter or neutronium or a black hole? Yes. It could be any of these things, because these are all forms of degenerate matter. So, yeah, as normal matter, no. But as degenerate matter, yes. Or as simply pure energy, again, yes.
You can't squeeze a Volkswagen into a dot smaller than a period page, and here they are teaching the kids.
No, you can. You just can't do it as normal matter.
I mean, like,
The whole
is he trying to say that, like, we don't have the technology to do that?
I think he's saying it's physically
Sure.
impossible for any circumstance to turn a freight train into a
I don't know
Fable-sized
what
object.
would make. I don't know what would make a Volkswagen collapse in on itself to form a black hole, but it doesn't have to for black holes to exist.
Right. And if,
Kent
you,
doesn't understand how black holes form.
and if you just tossed one into a supernova that was going to turn into a neutron star, if it got into the core,
Hold up.
maybe it could turn into neutronium.
Is Kent trying to argue that black holes don't exist?
I don't think he's explicitly doing that, but it's the conclusion that you would have to come to if you listen seriously to him, is that black holes don't exist.
I don't know what his conclusion is for this argument he's giving, and it seems like it might be that black holes and neutron stars can't exist. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
entire universe. I mean, do you realize how big this Earth is?
Oh no, he's just talking about
And
the
it's tiny
singularity
compared to some of the other planets.
before the black hole. He
You
doesn't
realize
understand
the
that
sun.
space-time expanded
Yeah.
and everything within.
And it also wasn't matter at first. And Carrie Bronson for 5 says, I can't think of how to do so, so it's impossible. Yeah, that's basically Ken's argument.
All matter is energy. E equals mc squared. We'll demonstrate how. And I don't know, how do they say it's like matter is just basically energy that's bound together in the quarks and all that. I could be wrong, but it can be converted, and Kent knows the stuff. He's already talked about this with his thermodynamics.
I want to point one thing out to Carrie Bronson.
So
Oh, sorry.
when I was just going to say, when the universe
Sorry.
was so small in the singularity, yeah, there was too much energy for any of it to be matter. My understanding is until
Right.
you know.
Yeah, matter
after the
didn't
Big Bang.
occur for millions of years, as far as I know. And so, Carrie Bronson, by the way, I believe you're a channel member, so every time you send a super chat, you could be making us drink by putting in the correct emoji. Just saying.
And how many other stars there are. The last estimate by the Hubble telescope in 2003 said we estimate there are 70 sextillion stars. Well, if you want to learn a little math here, you got million, and then billion, and then trillion, quadrillion, quad meaning 4, quintillion, sextillion, septillion, octillion, novillion, decillion. Who cares?
Oh, yeah, good job, Kent. I'll take a drink for Kent being able to name numbers.
I'm not going to take a drink for that because I don't
70
care that he can do that.
sextillion stars is the estimate. Most of them gigantic compared to our sun. And they want me to believe that all of this was in a dot smaller than a period on a page.
You know, they want you to believe the energy equivalent.
I have to stop shaking my head so I can shake it again for another separate reason. Most of the stars in the universe are smaller than the sun.
Also true.
A vast majority. But the ones that are bigger can be way bigger. But yeah, and then what was the other thing he said? No, there were no stars in the singularity.
Yeah. No.
Stars formed later, Kent.
Yeah.
Like I said, they couldn't form. Matter couldn't form, and then finally, I gotta have to go through the timeline again. I don't want to say anything incorrect, but there was a time when you couldn't have any protons and neutrons, and then the universe cooled enough and you could. And there was a time where
You couldn't have
Hydrogen-
or atoms.
yeah, you couldn't have any atoms, and then the universe kept cooling, and then you could, right? So
Yep. And then finally, some of those atoms could collapse into stars, and you had your first generation of stars.
and stars are really good at fusing elements into larger elements.
Yep. It's sort of their job.
Satan
is.
has to be laughing at these evolutionists for believing this stuff.
He would if they believed that. He would be laughing
Right.
at them.
Can you think of anything more absurd?
No, I can't think of too
Then it
many
says
things
in the
more
textbook-
absurd than all the stars already existing in the dot smaller than the period at the end of this sentence.
Yeah. Well, Kent Hovind's conception of the Big Bang is basically stars and planets zooming out of an explosion. That's what he thinks the idea of the Big Bang is. Which, yeah, that's crazy. That's why no one thinks that that's what the Big Bang is, who actually knows anything about the
You
Big Bang.
realize why I used to believe this guy? Like, that sounded crazy to me too. Well, that's
Yeah.
not what happened.
Right.
No one teaches that, but I didn't have real evolution. I was going to say evolutionists teaching evolution. I didn't have real education when it comes to that, when it comes to evolution and age of the universe and that kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna take a intermission real soon here. Although, so here's something fun. So the piano music that I have at the beginning of my intermission video is something I downloaded from it was bensound.com, which has nothing to do with Bent Hovind, but it was there under I don't remember exactly which license it was under, but I do credit it in my video. So either way, it's been getting copyright claimed lately. I've had like 8 or 9 of my live streams go ineligible for about a half an hour as a copyright claim goes through, and I just trim out the segment. So yeah, I might have to figure out a new soundtrack for that or do a new intermission video or something. So stay tuned on that. But anyway, for now, we're going to go with the regular intermission video, and we will be back in about 3 to 4 minutes or so. So catch you on the other side of the intermission.
Oh, Nani? Dare? Oh, Gojira desu ka? Hai, Gojira-san. Hai.
And we are back. So, welcome back, everybody. We are just got fresh drinks, and yeah, let's go with more Kent.
For some unknown reason, this region exploded. This explosion...
That's a really bad way to phrase that, and I'm sorry for the 1992 kids who had to read that because it wasn't an explosion. It was an expansion of space-time.
is called the Big Bang. Well, if you're going to get all that matter squeezed that tight, first place, that would take some kind of energy that like we can't comprehend, okay?
Not if that's the starting condition. If t equals 0 is when all of the energy, by the way, Kent, none of it matter, energy is squeezed in there, then yeah.
Why would it explode? How long did it stay in the squeezed position? And why did it explode? And where did the energy...
It didn't stay in the squeezed position, it expanded. And there was no before, because if that's the beginning of this local, at least this local area of space-time, then there is no before that it can be in a state from before. Like, just... Can't remember how you said that it doesn't make sense to talk about a before or after with God? Yeah, if the Big Bang is the start of space-time, it also doesn't make sense to talk about a before, or how long was it like that. So I'm going to take a drink.
come from to make this explosion?
I'll say this. It's not really intuitive to think time began when, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it can be hard. It can be hard to grasp the concept of time beginning, like
I agree with you.
nothing before the singularity. I don't know. I think Ken's struggling with it, and I know I used to. So
Silver Harlow points out, he keeps saying impossible while believing in an omnipotent being. I don't understand. Yeah, that's certainly an interesting point. There is, however, a couple things. One is that there are different definitions of omnipotent. So the most common version of omnipotence does not allow logically contradictory things. So most ideas about omnipotence would say that God can't create a circle with corners, right? Because that's a contradictory statement. Or a rock so heavy that God couldn't lift it, because again, that's a contradictory statement. Kent probably believes that. However, there's nothing logically contradictory about really high density energy. So even if Kent thinks it is impossible, well, God can do all things through Christ who strengthens me? No, that's not right.
Where did the energy come from to get it together to begin with? I mean, there's a host of questions you can ask about the Big Bang. Like, what exploded?
Nothing. Because there was no explosion.
Why did it explode? Where did it come from? Anyway, that's what the textbook says. For some unknown reason, this exploded. This textbook says, after many billions of years, all the matter and energy will once again be packed into a small area. This area may be no larger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then another Big Bang will occur.
Yeah, this is the cyclic universe. That's been largely ruled out at this point, but I guess in 1999 it hadn't been.
It was very reasonable at the time.
Yeah. In 1999, that wasn't an unreasonable thing.
The formation of a universe will begin all over again. A universe that periodically expands and then contracts back on itself is called a closed universe. In a closed universe, a Big Bang may occur once every 80 to 100 billion years. Now keep in mind, they cut down a tree to print that. Where is that?
Oh, that was a joke that didn't land. Take a drink.
Al Gore when you need him. That's what I want to know. He should have been hugging that tree. That is absolutely so dumb to believe such a thing.
Yeah, I agree, Kent. Your version of the Big Bang is indeed dumb, and no one should believe it. What they should believe is the actual Big Bang model as put out there by, I don't know, physicists.
It exploded. It's going to come back someday and squeeze in and then explode again and then come back and explode again. Do they really honestly believe that?
I thought the Big Bounce was a reasonable potential hypothesis until they were able to demonstrate that the universe will expand forever.
Yeah.
Resulting in heat death.
So yes,
the universe.
At some point, people did reasonably believe that as at least a possibility. I don't actually see what's wrong with that.
I mean, can they possibly believe such a thing? This textbook author says nothing really means...
why is it so unbelievable?
Oh, because
what makes that idea so unbelievable?
It doesn't fit with Kent Hovind's intuition about how matter and energy work. That's literally it.
That's not an argument from Kent, though, because even if he had said that, which he didn't, it still wouldn't be an argument, right?
It would not be an argument, no.
That's it. I'm just going to drink.
Okay.
Nothing. Now, you have to be at least that smart to write a book, okay? He said not only matter and...
Okay, here's the thing about nothing really means nothing, though. It's what you're about to read, Kent. Not only matter and energy would disappear, but space and time. Normally, when you say, oh, hey, what's in that mug that you're holding, and you say nothing, what you don't mean is an absence of space and time and matter, right? Usually you just mean like, oh, there's nothing, there's no liquid in it, it's just air.
Has it been demonstrated that the vacuum of space-time is not a non-zero energy level? It's just the universe's lowest energy level?
Yep.
Or is that just a theory that it might not be the lowest energy level.
Vacuum energy is a real thing. That's what causes the plates to clamp together
So-
in experiments involving the Casimir effect. Or
Yeah,
as Kent
so-
likes to call it, the Kashmir effect.
Right. So nothing, when you think of the vast emptiness in space, even the parts that don't have one atom per square meter that have nothing, they still have vacuum energy.
Yep.
Nothing doesn't mean nothing in that context. In this context, matter, energy, space, and time. Is this still talking about the big bounce? Like if the big crunch happened
No,
or
No,
before the Big Bang?
we're talking about the Big Bang at this point. If the
Yeah,
universe is
so-
expanding, then it must have been smaller. If you could run the life of the universe in reverse, like a film, you would see the universe contracting until it disappeared in a flash of light, leaving nothing.
Energy would disappear, but also space and time. By the way, that's an interesting sentence, and he's right. If you have matter but have no space, where would you put it? If you have matter and space but have no time, then when would you put it? Time, space, and matter is what's called a continuum.
No, matter isn't a continuum. I'm just taking a drink. Space-time is a continuum. Matter is discrete bits within a continuum.
Can't have one without the other. We went over
In fact, it's not even clear that space-time is a continuum because space is quantized at the length of the Planck length, so that's actually
Yeah,
not continuous. So
Time is quantized at the length of the
Planck
quantum unit of
time.
time. And I don't know what he means by what did he say? What term did he use?
Oh, he said
I
that
can't
he said
remember
that matter, space, and time are a continuum.
continuum. Yeah, well, I don't know what he means by continuum.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Like,
Usually, the word continuum, like philosophically, in terms of like philosophy of science, means that you have something that is not quantized, right? It's just continuous. And the reason that space-time is called a continuum is because, at least at the scale of relativity, it is a continuum. There is no smallest unit of space in general relativity or special relativity. Now we get into quantum mechanics, which doesn't cohere well with relativity. You do actually find that space apparently shouldn't be treated as a continuum, but
well, and I will say this: if there is nothing but space-time with no matter or energy, doesn't have to be matter, could be energy. Like, can anything happen? And if events can't happen, how would you even measure time or space?
oh, we're
How
not.
would that even be possible?
I do not want to get into like A theory versus B theory of time.
What do you guys think is going to happen when heat death happens? Can you even measure time? I mean, no events can happen. Think about
that last week, didn't we? About the time, space, was that? Okay. You can't have one without the other. So they're correct as saying not only, nothing really means nothing. Not only is there no matter, there's no time and no space. So the question would be, how did this get here? And the Big Bang theorists will say, well, the Big Bang, as this nothing exploded, it created time, space, and matter all simultaneously. Textbook says,
No, it wouldn't have created matter simultaneously. Time, space, and energy would be there at the beginning, but no matter. So I'm going to take a drink again because Kent cannot possibly get it through his head, apparently, that there was no matter at the beginning of the Big Bang.
however, physicists theorize that from this state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion 16.5 billion years ago. Now, by the way, the numbers for how long ago this happened float all over the scale.
No, what actually happens is that measurements are taken with a particular error margin, right? The plus or minus, because all instruments have an error, right? You cannot tell precisely. So, for instance, you might think you have a 2 centimeter bit of string, right? But if you could measure it down to like the nanometer, you would find it's probably not exactly 2 centimeters down to that many decimal points. You have some wiggle room on either end as to exactly how long it really is. And what has actually happened is that we have kept within the error margins of most measurements of the age of the universe, but we've come to a number that is within the, I guess, the young end of our initial measurements, and the error margin has been getting smaller and smaller. Now, we could get into the crisis in cosmology about what that means for actual age measurements and things like that, but I don't think this is the place for a crisis in cosmology stream. I don't know nearly enough about it.
On the low range, I think the lowest number I've seen is 8 billion years ago was the Big Bang. On the high range, 20 billion years ago.
Fun how the current accepted estimate at 13.7 whatever is within the previous estimated ranges. It's almost like it's within the margin of error. Weird. Like, honestly, this is the same thing as like saying, okay, I took a walk yesterday. And so you ask me like, oh, how long was the walk? And I'm like, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles. And then I turn out, oh, hold on. I have, my phone has an app that tells me how far I walked, right? And it says, oh, it was 3.2 miles. But then I notice that, oh, my app is only accurate down to 1/10 of a mile. So then I get out actual measuring devices and I measure the path that I walked, and I find that it was actually 3.18 miles. At no point has my estimate actually been wrong. I've just been getting more precise about exactly how far I walked that day.
Like this textbook I showed you a few slides ago, it says 18 to 20 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang. I think the currently accepted view now in 2005 is that it happened 14.6 billion years ago. When I debated Hugh Ross at Reasons to Believe
I've seen that debate too.
in Pasadena, California, debated him for 3 hours. He said the Big Bang was I think he said something like 14.62 billion years. I said, you have got to be kidding.
Yeah, give or take, Kent. There's always going to be a give or take. And I don't remember what Hugh Ross said about the age of the universe in that debate, because I don't remember much about that debate, except that it was obvious how little Kent Hovind knew about cosmology and how much Hugh Ross, a cosmologist, did know about cosmology. Because that's the thing that you got to remember about Hugh Ross. I disagree with Hugh Ross on a lot of things. He's really, really bad at biology. But he's really, really good at cosmology because he's an actual cosmologist. That's his job.
That's crazy.
Right.
It's
and
not crazy.
he knows more than enough about cosmology to know that the idea that the universe is 6,000 years old is just complete insanity.
Do you really believe such a thing?
Yeah, how crazy that a cosmologist would believe the standard model of cosmology.
This textbook says this theory of the origin of the universe is called the Big Bang Theory. Now, the Big Bang Theory started by a guy named George Edward Lemaitre.
Lemaitre. Just... get someone who speaks French to say it a few times, and then you can just approximate it, Kent. My goodness.
I think he thinks he is approximating it.
I know. It's...
George Lemaitre died in 1966. He's the one who invented the Big Bang Theory. When it was first invented, not too many people believed in it.
Well, yeah.
That's not what invented means.
Yeah, it's not invented. It was proposed. And the thing is, yeah, not many people believe in a new theory as it's proposed. It has to be shown to be accurate, right? That's just how humans work. If I have an idea here where I live, it can't immediately spread to the rest of the entire population of the world instantly. So yeah, of course, when it was proposed, not many people believed it. Because obviously, they already believed something else.
Like many theories, comes along and, well, I don't believe that, and everybody, but pretty soon it came to be accepted, and now if you question
Right, because of the overwhelming evidence.
the Big Bang, boy, you're banished academic Siberia,
Again, because of the overwhelming evidence. I'm going to take a drink because that's a stupid statement. I'm going to discuss it a little bit more.
When you work in a field that's based on evidence and you willingly ignore overwhelming evidence, you should be laughed out of that field.
Right. And the thing is,
It doesn't matter what the field is.
you can have...
And if you can come up with more evidence for something else,
right, which is what happened.
do that then.
That's what happened with the Big Bang. At first, it was like, nah, that's pretty crazy. But then, when proponents of the Big Bang were like, okay, but look at this evidence, and people were like, okay, well, maybe it's not crazy, but still, I don't know. And then eventually we're like, oh no, there's so much evidence now that it's ridiculous to deny the Big Bang.
Harry Brunson. George LeMaitre is an entirely different person. That's funny.
You don't dare question the Big Bang Theory. But he said, according to Isaac Asimov, LeMaitre conceived this mass to be no more than a few light years in diameter.
Okay, so less than a few light years in diameter is what we're going for. So anything smaller than a few light years works out with Lemaitre's first idea.
It's LeMaitre.
Lemaitre.
Yeah.
No, that's an entirely different person, remember?
Oh yeah, that's right. It's a different person.
At the very least, that would be 2, right? A few light.
No, Kent. That would at most be 2.
Well,
What does Kent think?
I think of a few as 3. So
Okay, but sure, 3. But what does Kent think no more than means? If I told Kent,
not Kent, Bolton David Heiser.
well, no, this is Kent's interpretation of this.
Oh, I thought Bolton David Heiser is the guy who wrote it at the bottom.
Oh, well, yeah,
I
well,
don't know.
I'm pretty sure that
And
Bolton
either way,
David Heiser
Kent does
knows it.
believe
But
this.
yeah, Kent thinks, apparently, if I said to Kent, hey, Kent, could you go pick up some fruit at the market, but don't make sure not to get no more than 3 apples. Kent apparently thinks that he could come back with 3 or more apples, and that would be what no more than means.
Well, he thinks at least 2.
Well, yeah, apparently.
Light years would have to be at least 2 light years. Okay.
No,
For some reason.
could be at most a few. There's no lower bound implied or given or stated.
Well, that would be 12 trillion miles across, because a light year is about 6 trillion miles. Light travels
Sure,
about
why not?
6 trillion miles in 1 year.
Okay.
So he said the thing that exploded is 12 trillion light years across.
No, it was no more than
smaller.
Or smaller, yeah. That much
And,
or
well,
smaller.
18 because that's.
I'm just going to
3.
accept the 2. It doesn't matter to me that much whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever.
Okay. All right. Yeah. There.
That's a big dot. Then in 1965, they said, oh, no, it wasn't that big. It was only 275 million miles across.
Which is still less, so we're still good. I'm just going to take a drink every time the next thing doesn't contradict the previous thing. So that's one. So that's twice so far.
Okay.
Well, that's way down. I mean, that's a whole lot smaller.
It's true.
Then in
drink for that, that's
1972,
true.
they said, oh, no, it's only 71 million miles. You know, the
Again,
That's
not
small, yeah.
contradictory. Yep.
Big Bang theory, as it was taught in the textbooks in the early 70s, was there was a Big Bang, 20 billion years ago, and this one mass, 71 million miles across, exploded. Then in 1974, they said, oh, no, it's only 54,000 miles across.
Again, that's smaller, so take a drink.
In 1983, they said it's a trillionth the diameter of a proton. Well, you figure, if you want to get a visual picture of how big an atom is, this is a neat.
So I just want to say that through this entire list, and we see the rest of it, it's not going to change. At no point is anything contradictory happening. All that's happening is there's estimates of the maximum volume of the observable universe at the beginning of the Big Bang. That's it.
And as of right now, that original statement remains true.
Yep. All
The
of them.
universe started in a size no more than a few million, or what, a few light years across
Right.
in diameter.
And all of those statements remain true. The whole list is still true, according to current modern science, except at the end, because there is some debate as to whether or not there's a singularity, or there's nothing, or what nothing even means in this context. And you know what? It's not my fight. I'll be interested to know how it settles out. But yeah,
I think I thought it was considered infinitesimal, which my understanding is not 0, but it's barely not 0, or barely not nothing. That's how I think of it.
All right, here we
Could
go.
be wrong.
Picture, okay? How big is a grain of salt? Can you picture a grain of salt?
Yes.
No.
Now I want you to take that grain of salt and expand it until it's as tall as the Empire State Building
Okay.
in New York, okay? expanded in all directions. Length, width, height is still a giant cube, but it's now as big as the Empire State Building.
Yes, I understand.
If you could expand it that much, the molecules would expand equally proportional, and they would now become as big as the original grain of salt. How many grains of salt would...
I have no idea how accurate that is, and I don't care. Also, salt doesn't have molecules in it. So, it has a bunch of ions.
that take stacked on top of each other to go to the top of the Empire State Building? Several, right? That's how many molecules there are stacked up the edge of a grain of salt.
Okay.
Just to give you the picture.
This seems like another instance of creationists going, ooh, big number, wow. But the fact that there are big numbers in science isn't remarkable. It doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't provide evidence for anything other than that big numbers occur. Like, okay, I guess that's why scientific notation is useful. Moving on.
Yeah.
And salt is sodium chloride. It's a fairly good size, molecule compared to other molecules like hydrogen or helium. They're even...
Kent doesn't know what a molecule is. I'm taking a drink. Kent doesn't know what a molecule is.
Well,
Hydrogen is an element. It occurs in atoms. H2, diatomic hydrogen, is a molecule. So if you just say hydrogen is a molecule, you're wrong. You can say H2 is a molecule, but also sodium chloride isn't a molecule. It's an ionic compound, which means it has a bunch of little repeating ions, positive and negative, right? Because some of the atoms have given up electrons and others have taken them entirely away, and then they stay near each other because of their relative electrical charges. And then this happens in a repeating cuboid pattern, which then you can break up in water, and that's why water can be conductive, because it has dissolved ions. So there are no molecules of salt. Hydrogen and helium aren't molecules on their own, and a single unit of sodium chloride is actually pretty small compared to any organic molecule. Yeah. So it actually is a pretty small unit. I can't even really call it a molecule. But, yeah, it's, like, everything about this is just crazy.
A lot smaller than that, okay? So...
there actually aren't that many things that are that much smaller. I mean, like, yeah, sure, like, H2 and He2, sure, like, hydrogen, helium atom, or molecules, of H2 and He2. Yeah, I guess those are smaller, but, like, even diatomic oxygen is going to be bigger than that. Is it? Actually, I'm not sure about that one. But almost all organic compounds are going to be.
Grain of salt expanded to the size of the Empire State Building would now make the molecules become the size of the original grain of salt, just to give you a visual image of how tiny molecules are. Now, in that molecule, you have atoms.
Mm-hmm.
And in that atom, you have protons.
All correct. Take a drink.
Which are unbelievably tiny. And so this, in 1983, they began teaching that the thing that exploded was a trillionth the diameter of a proton.
No more than. Kent. Remember the no more than? This is how English works. And that's the thing. Like, it's hard for me to believe that Kent Hovind is actually stupid enough to not know what the phrase no more than means. But the problem is that if he's not that stupid, it leaves me with Kent is dishonest. And I think that's where I'm landing most of the time nowadays. But, like, it's really kind of disturbing that that's where I tend to land. Is that, no, Kent is just dishonest. I wish I didn't have to land there. I didn't always. I used to think he was a sincere idiot. But, I can't really go with that anymore.
You can't even picture how tiny something like that would be. And then, of course, now, they said, oh, it was smaller than that. It was nothing. Nothing exploded and produced everything. I think this shows a classic example of how once you start to believe something stupid, you'll believe anything. Once you start to believe, we came from a monkey. Oh, maybe we came from a squirrel.
No. Take a drink.
You are a monkey, Kent.
Squirrels are not. Although I will
Also,
say, oh, sorry.
I wanted to go back to because I may have misunderstood his grain of salt analogy. Like, does he think that all the matter expanded, or does he think that the universe, meaning the fabric of the universe, the space-time that exists, is what expanded, and everything in it, still
Along
exists?
the right. I don't think that Kent Hovind is coherent enough to make that distinction reliably. That's what I think.
Because those are two different things.
I know, but I don't think that he can tell the difference.
Well,
I don't think
I know you know that. I know you know that.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate that those are two different things.
Right.
Because
Maybe
it's
we
important to
came
know that.
from rock. Or maybe we came from nothing. It's a slippery slope, okay? Once you start down that slope, you're going to end up all the way at the bottom, okay? And you're going to bump every dumb stick on the way down the hill as you roll down. Yes. How
No one laughed at
absurd
that,
can you get?
Right.
Here's a Discover magazine a couple years ago.
Not a scientific journal, I would add. Like science. Wait, you said Discovery magazine? Yeah, okay. I was going to say science, because science is an academic journal. Discover is not.
Where did everything come from? Now watch this. Cover page, okay, front cover. It says,
I can barely
the
read that.
universe
Oh, there it
burst
is.
into something from absolutely nothing. Zero. Nada. As it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. How is that possible? Ask Alan Guth. His theory of inflation helps explain everything. Well,
I don't think science teaches that as the universe got bigger, more energy came into being.
No, it doesn't. Now, more
Wouldn't
matter.
that violate some thermodynamic laws?
Right. It doesn't. It doesn't teach that. So, now there are some ideas around dark matter which actually would violate the first law if they're true, but it's not clear that they're true, and that also goes back to the crisis in cosmology. And again, I don't super want to get into that, but yeah, this is Discover magazine is a pop sci magazine with articles designed for lay people to read, and for that reason they are oversimplified in many cases, because let's be honest, I couldn't actually puzzle through like a cosmology paper. There's no way. It's not going to happen. So that means I'm going to get things wrong, and I'm going to have things explained to me in ways that are inadequate.
I got to meet this Alan Guth, okay? Alan Guth said in Scientific American, clear back in 1996, he said, the observable universe could have evolved from an infinitesimal region. It's then, by the way, that's a dot in the Hebrew there. It's then tempting to go one step further and
Nope,
speculate
that was a joke
that the
didn't
entire
land.
universe evolved from literally nothing. You see, boys and girls, we all came from a dot.
Nope, that's not what Alan Guth said there. He said it's tempting to consider. That doesn't mean he's saying it. That means he's willing to ponder it. And Kent does this a lot. He misrepresents his sources. And the thing is, it's not even that he's quote mining. It's that he's putting the actual quote up and then blatantly misrepresenting it anyway. And that bugs me.
And the dot came from nothing. There has to be, I still haven't, if you can help me on this, I need some help on this. I cannot figure out.
Infinitesimal means extremely small, and it means in mathematics a number that is approaching zero, but not zero. I just looked it up just to make sure.
Okay.
Not nothing. So, sorry, Discover magazine.
Yeah.
That quote was wrong, but I don't think the quote from Alan Guth actually said that. It did say infinitesimal.
It said
It also
infinitesimal.
said could have.
Right. He said it's tempting to speculate that the universe could have developed from absolutely nothing. And yes,
I
agree,
feel
it
like
is-
you touched on that while I was reading the definition.
I did, yeah.
Of
Away.
infinitesimal.
Right.
to help the evolutionists see how dumb that is. How can you help somebody see what you believe is that's real dumb.
It's
We all
real
came
dumb
from
to believe in
nothing.
evidence. Got it.
Yeah.
But see, what does that teaching do if you stop and think about it? If we really came from nothing which exploded, then how can you have morals?
What?
How can anything...
If the universe came from nothing, which, by the way, is what Kent believes because he's an ex nihilo creationist. So if what Kent Hovind believes is true, how can you have morals? Take a drink, everybody. I don't know, Kent. You tell me. You're the ex nihilo creationist. Let me, when you figure it out, let me know.
be right or wrong?
Oh my goodness.
I've asked evolutionists that question all over the world. Simple question. If your theory is true, if evolution is true, how do you tell right from wrong?
Yeah.
It's like one has literally nothing to do with the other.
If the
literally nothing other than that they're spoken in the same language, I guess. But like logically, no, those are not connected ideologies at all.
Yeah. If the germ theory of disease is true, how could you have morality? If the theory of universal gravitation is true, how could you have morality? If the cellular theory is true, how could you have morality? The same way as any other way, right? None of these contradict any moral philosophy, right? You can still have divine command theory. You can still have, you can still do Kantianism. You can still do virtue ethics. You can still do consequentialism. Like all of these things, right? They still work, whether or not the universe came from nothing. And still, the greatest thing about it is that Kent does think the universe came from nothing because he thinks God spoke it into being out of nothing.
He said that in this video.
Right.
If you missed it, go back to the beginning.
It was like 20 minutes ago in the video. It was in the same discourse, Kent.
They simply cannot answer the question.
I don't believe you. Because anyone who has a moral philosophy that they've thought out, who also accepts evolution, which is a lot of people, will be able to tell you how they derive their morality. Now, you might not agree with it, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with everyone on everything. But they definitely have it.
Because if that's how we got here, I mean, does nothing have morals?
No. And no one suggested
nothing
it
can
does.
have morals.
No, yeah.
Because
Does
then it wouldn't be
matter have
nothing.
Right.
morals?
Some matter does.
Yeah.
Like I'm made of matter and I have morals.
Mm-hmm.
But this does not.
Some matter.
This
So
class.
yeah, some bits of matter can have morality or morals or a moral theory.
Does matter have rules? I mean,
Yep. Lots of them.
There are laws of nature or whatever you want to call it.
Well, not only that, but there are also rules that people have for themselves and each other,
That's true.
and people are made of matter. So
In fact,
yeah.
I think only matter has rules.
Oh, well then, does God have rules?
Oh, maybe God's not made of matter, or maybe God is made of matter, or maybe God has rules. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not only matter has rules.
I would say if God exists or other spiritual things exist, then not only matter has rules, but matter definitely does have rules in some cases.
it's such a dumb theory. Well,
Gary Bronson says yes, the void has morals. How dare you? I disagree, sir. The void is simply a place where you can cast your fears and anxieties and they'll dissipate into the
And
nothingness.
super chats.
And super chats, you can cast them in there too, because the void accepts donations.
The void accepts donations.
Yep. Which actually reminds me, there is something that I need to do while we let this play a little bit. So tell me when to stop it, Bent.
came from nothing. I asked the professor on the plane, I said, well, sir, I don't understand this Big Bang Theory. Explain this to me. He said, well, 20 billion years ago, all the material in the universe was concentrated in one little tiny dot, smaller than a period on a page, and it was spinning. I like this textbook says. It's as the nebula shrank, it spun faster and faster.
No, hold on. Hold on. I'm going to go back.
The
I
universe
think
was
he's doing the
concentrated
thing.
in one little tiny dot, smaller than a period on a page, and it was spinning. I like this textbook says. It's as the nebula shrank, it spun faster and faster.
Yeah.
This is
Yep, he's confusing the nebular hypothesis for the formation of the solar system with the Big Bang, which was not spinning in particular. Look, it says it right there. A star, our sun, was born. The sun didn't burst directly out of the Big Bang, Kent. Oh my goodness.
Angular momentum exists.
The
The Big Bang happened, at least according to modern understanding of all scientific evidence. And as nebulas shrink, they do spin. Those are true statements. Most of them, what did I say? 3 things? I don't know if any of them are really related.
I
guess you could find some relation, but
developing.
not the one Kent has.
I'm currently developing a headache.
Hmm.
Yeah, like for real. My goodness, Kent. Okay, we're gonna push through.
Essential point here now, because everything that we see in the universe is spinning. Even the molecules are spinning, right?
Kind of. That's a little iffy. Sometimes yes, not always.
What does he think he's saying? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know.
Is he talking about like electrons have spin, or is he talking about random molecular kinetic
I think he thinks of
kinetic
molecules.
energy, which is temperature, basically?
I think he thinks of molecules as like a billiard ball that can just be spinning, and that means something, but it really doesn't.
Everything is spinning. The world is spinning. The planets are spinning. The universe, the galaxies are spinning. Everything's spinning. The solar system is spinning.
There's no evidence the universe is spinning, Kent. I'm not even sure what that would mean. What would be spinning in relation to? So I'm going to take a drink.
So where did this spin come from?
The conservation of angular momentum.
They have 2 choices. The initial object was spinning, and therefore all the fragments are spinning, or each of them picked up a spin on their own.
No. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Let's say you have a vast field of, say, just diffuse gas, right? And for just due to random fluctuations in density, some of it's going to condense down. Well, that random collection of gas atoms and molecules and whatnot is going to have a non-zero angular momentum, simply because the net momentum in that thing is going to have some non-zero value, just because they're all randomly flying around, right? And if you have a large amount of mass, that amount of angular momentum, because momentum is proportional to mass, is going to be very large. And when it condenses down into a smaller and smaller space, it's going to spin faster and faster, because angular momentum has to be conserved. And most likely, any subparts that form their own smaller bit, like planets, are also going to carry spin with the same direction and are going to continue doing that until something disturbs it. But even if something disturbs it, like Venus rotates backwards, well, that's fine, as long as something else in the solar system picked up that much angular momentum, which actually would have ended up being more than Venus would have had if you were to measure it from 0. So it all works out, as long as this total amount stays the same, which collisions can do. Also, if you do something like, you can have things capture into retrograde orbits around gas giants and things like that, right? That's perfectly fine. There's no problem with a retrograde capture. And I'm pretty sure Kent's going to get into both of those. And when he does, we're going to take a drink.
Now that would be a serious problem. To say every single thing picked up this spin. From where?
Yes, the thing that no one thinks is the case would be a problem if people thought it was the case, because it would violate the conservation of angular momentum. I agree with you, Kent. That would I don't know if it's stupid or right, because it's right on one way and stupid another way because the straw
It's
man.
just like it's a lazy.
Drink for Godzilla.
It's a lazy straw man, is what it is. Most of his straw mans in this episode have been pretty lazy. I don't know. That one's the laziest so far. Maybe, who knows? They're all lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier, and I've never met anybody argue about this one. It's much easier to say, well, the initial object must have been spinning.
Kind of.
That's what they teach in the textbooks. This
That gets into like the weird thing about like what's an object, and I don't want to have that discussion.
nebula
Why not?
began to rotate. It spun faster and faster. But gradually, the spinning nebula flattened into a huge disk almost 10 billion kilometers across. At the center of the disk, a growing protosun or new sun began to take shape. As the gas cloud continued to collapse toward its center, the protosun grew more and more massive.
Notice, we were supposed to be talking about the Big Bang, and now we have a protostar with matter collapsing onto it, which is sort of the opposite of a Big Bang.
While Kent was reading that, I was thinking, does he think he's still talking about the Big Bang? I wonder that.
I don't know.
I guess we'll find out. I think we'll find out.
Now, right there, this is absolute stupidity when it comes to science.
Why?
Gas clouds don't condense because of their own gravity.
They do, though, and if you're going to say they don't, then citation needed.
They do. I know that there's something to do with like they can't condense enough to form start fusion without some other interaction. Like a supernova that causes the dust and the gas to start going crazy. And,
well, they can if they're cold enough.
Well, I could be wrong then, but that was my understanding. Or at least our solar system.
Yeah, our solar system.
They say is seeded by 2 supernovae, I believe.
Yeah, but if gas is cold enough, then it can actually fall together enough to actually create fusion.
Well, I say.
Are you afraid when you go out there that a cloud is going to condense into a solid material and fall on you? Anybody ever been hit by a falling cloud?
Yeah, that's what
I have.
That's literally rain. I'm taking a drink.
I raised my hand. I don't know if I raised it. Yeah, you could see it.
I'll tell you what. If you've never been rained on, type 1 in the chat. If you've ever, not just rain, sorry. If you've ever had precipitation touch your skin, put 1 in the chat. If you've never, ever had precipitation touch your skin, put a 2. I feel like there's not going to be many 2s, and if you do put a 2, I'm going to suspect you're lying. My goodness. Have you ever been hit by a falling cloud? Maddie should have been here for that. I wish Maddie were here.
I remember driving through fog, but it wasn't real because that can't be real. Or like walking through it, because no, that can't. That's impossible.
My goodness. Okay, I'm gonna hit play.
It doesn't happen.
Oh, the ones are rolling in.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like every day somewhere in the world. I just can't. The Vero Beat asks a good question. So he says, I'm confused about that. I thought supernovae created black holes or neutron stars. So how do stars form out of it? So they do create neutron stars and black holes, but they also spread a bunch of gas and dust.
All the rest of their outer layers and all that.
Right. So the vast majority of the mass of a star that goes supernova is actually ejected out into interstellar space. Very little of it actually goes on to form the stellar remnant. And so, yeah, that's basically it.
Well, and so let's say we have not so cold gas where our solar system is now, and it's there's just too much motion. It can't collapse in on itself and start fusion, and then eventually all this material from this other supernova hits, and all of it interacts. I don't know all the mechanisms of what goes on after that, but it does trigger fusion.
Yeah.
And it can trigger it, and so also it's bringing a whole bunch of elements that we probably didn't have or we might not have had in this region of space or space-time.
Yeah, that's one of the big things about it is that the supernova isn't necessarily needed just to form stars, but if you want to have like a solar system with like rocky planets and whatnot, you need those heavier elements that you really only get from supernovas.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think there's a reason why most stars are M-class stars and probably don't have. Well, I guess I don't know if that's true if stars typically have planets or not, but I think they do. I think it's an average 1 planet per star was the most recent estimate I had read.
The Venerable Beat asks how the matter doesn't get sucked into the black hole. So one thing is black holes don't actually just suck things in, right? For above 3 Schwarzschild radii from the center of a black hole, you can have perfectly normal orbits that are stable, and you can have circular orbits above that level, or at or above that level. Sorry. So the Schwarzschild radius is the radius at which a given mass will end up being a black hole. So if you have any amount of mass in a radius that is smaller than the Schwarzschild radius, it will be a black hole. Within the Schwarzschild radius, nothing can orbit or escape. Everything will just inevitably fall towards the center. Above that, you can have orbits that are unstable and non-circular, but are orbits nonetheless, up until you get to the 3 times the Chandrasekhar, the Schwarzschild radius. Think about Chandrasekhar limit. Above that, you can just have perfectly normal orbits. So anything above that, if it's ejected with sufficient force, can just reach escape velocity, no problem. And in fact, anything even right up to the Schwarzschild radius with enough velocity can be ejected. And when supernovae happen, they are themselves literally explosions, right? They are the thing that Kent thinks the Big Bang was. They are explosions in space. And so basically, just as long as you're far enough away from the core, which is going to collapse, you can get away just fine. So.
Clouds of gas and dust expand.
No, not always.
What's going to squeeze them together?
Gravity. Have you ever heard of gravity, Kent? I feel like I should have the desert file clip, but I don't know where to get it. So, yeah, I'm just going to have to do my impression. Gravity, Kent. Gravity. Have you ever heard of effing gravity? Gravity!
To make a solid. It takes enormous energy for this to happen.
Aren't solid. Taking a drink.
Did he say, or maybe he's talking about gas or water?
Well, no, he said, how do you get gas to condense down
Make
into a
water
solid?
and rain?
No, he's talking about stars still, I think.
I don't know if he's doing the cloud
But
thing or
even
not.
if you're doing the cloud thing, it's still not solid. Clouds are liquid, and the sun is a ball of plasma, Kent. It's a phase of matter you're not familiar with. Even though I think you actually have one of those little plasma balls. You know the ones where like you put your hand on it and the plasma streamers like go preferentially stick to your like fingertips and whatnot? I think he
Right.
actually owns one of those. But I still don't think he knows what plasma is. By the way, those things are cool, and I used to have one, and then it fell off of a table and broke, and I miss it. So I'm going to put it on my Amazon wish list. And anyone who wants to get me a little plasma ball, please do. I'll appreciate it, because I really do miss that thing.
I asked a professor one time, I said, you say stars form from clouds of dust. Hello?
This is a conversation that didn't happen. Take a drink.
This doesn't happen.
Why?
It's what's called Boyle's gas law. Write that down. That'll be a good quiz question. Boyle.
Oh, do you mean Boyle's ideal gas law? The rule that doesn't apply in extreme circumstances? Like, take a drink, Godzilla. Circumstances like extremely cold and extremely diffuse gas, which doesn't actually follow Boyle's laws, because they're ideal gas laws. Yeah, I think that's the kind of gas law he means.
Boyle. Boyle studied how gases behave. What happens when you try to compress a gas? It heats up.
Yeah, the sun's hot.
Enormous heat. When you take compressed gas and you release the pressure, now it absorbs heat, so the key...
I just can't. What if gas fell together via gravity? It would get hot. Yeah, Kent.
Yeah.
Can you think
Hot enough to ignite fusion.
Can you think of anything hot in the solar system that might have formed from falling gas? I'm taking a drink. I just can't with this one. This is like the most, like, last time was like just straight up evil with all the pseudoscience about medicine, but this is just like concentrated dumbness. Like just the
Hilarious.
stupidest takes you could possibly have. TC the Unbeliever says, is a plasma ball the same as a Tesla coil? I don't actually know the mechanism behind those little plasma balls and how they actually generate their field. So I can't actually answer that question. I don't think so. I believe it just generates a very high electrical potential. But then again, that's basically what Tesla coils do. Yeah, I don't know, actually. So TC the Unbeliever, you got me. I have no idea. I feel like I should.
I don't know either.
All right, well, because I know a Tescoy is basically just a step-up transformer that takes a regular, like, whatever you're getting out of the wall voltage and just brings it up to, like, an insanely high voltage. But yeah, I don't know.
And it gets cold. How many ever sprayed a spray can, and the can gets cold?
Yeah.
You spray it for a while, the can starts to get cold. When you release that's how an air conditioner.
Okay, Kent. Well, when you can find a way to spray the sun out of an air can, let me know.
Works. John, when you use compressed gases like, stuff for your welding, if you're releasing the pressure out of those cylinders.
So what he's saying is as gas expands, it cools.
Right.
It's also true.
Yep.
Which is the opposite of gas compressing and heating up.
Right. So
he's making true statements, but
yeah, I guess that's true. We'll take a drink for true statements.
Does he know why he's an idiot?
No, I don't think so.
Enormous amount of energy.
Does he think the sun should be expanding right now? You know what? I don't even know what his conclusion is. I'm not going to speculate at what it might be.
He believes the sun is shrinking, which is true. He thinks it's shrinking a lot faster than it actually is, and it's always been shrinking, which is false. But Kent actually is correct in believing that the sun is shrinking, which, according to him, I guess should make it hotter, even though it's not really entirely the case because most of the sun's heat is generated from things like fusion and whatnot. But whatever.
You to squeeze that gas into that cylinder, and it's still in a gas condition. Sometimes it condenses it to a liquid, like liquefied propane, but to squeeze something to a solid would require absolutely phenomenal amounts of pressure.
Kent, the sun isn't solid. What?
I'm solid.
Oh my goodness. Well, you didn't form via gravitational collapse. At least not primarily.
Solids can... It depends on what you're talking about when it comes to, you don't have to put, metal exists. What kind of pressure is this piece of copper under right now? It's under atmospheric pressure.
Weird.
It's not expanding out to a liquid or a gas. So I don't know what he's trying to get at.
Yeah, this is crazy talk. Now, this is sort of the classic Kent Hovind that I actually do prefer over medical woo, because that just makes me angry. But this, Kent just taking the dumbest, by far the dumbest take that he could possibly take that's where I want Kent to be at. So, but actually, we're going to start wrapping it up. Let's see. Coming out Thursday. What's coming Thursday? I don't even know. So give me a second. I'm going to find out what's coming out on Thursday. So let me go to my content. By the way, guys, I need 14 more subscribers to hit 6,000. So currently we've got about 45-ish people here in chat. So, if a third of you shared this with someone who's actually likely to subscribe, you would get me there. Just saying. Let's see.
If each of you shared it with 10 million people, this could get huge. This channel could grow a lot.
Yeah. Oh, you know what's coming out next is a little video series starting up called Revenge of the Biddle. Where we go back to Genesis apologetics and take a look at that. It is going to be a 5-part series, I think. Let's find out. Yep, a 5-part series. All of them are going to be between I think 22 and 30 minutes long or so. So look forward to that. Yeah, I'm looking at them now. There's 30 minutes, 24 minutes, 29 minutes. 26 minutes, 27 minutes. Yeah, okay, so around that. Yeah, so look forward to that on Thursday. Saturday, I don't know. This past Saturday, there was a Void stream. If you missed it, good luck finding it, because it is no longer public, because those don't stay public. So you never know when there's going to be a Void stream. That could just be any day. I basically just, if I feel like it, I just do it. You can request them, I suppose, and I may deign to entertain that request. Yeah. Sorry, I did not mean to sound so stuck up. Anyway, I did recently get an email from Jordan from Reasons to Doubt. He was going to be doing a Leaving Earth Creationism stream, and we had to postpone it indefinitely because of medical situation, and I think he's on the mend from that. So hopefully we will be scheduling that. And then next Tuesday should be an Eric with Erica. And I am thinking about trying to set up a Matt with Maddie, although Maddie is pretty busy for the next few weeks. Also, normally this would be a D&D week coming up here, but I don't believe there's going to be one because I believe Maddie is going to be traveling again and she's our DM. But if you don't know, Bent, Hovind, and I do a live stream D&D game where we encourage people to, instead of super chatting, give to the charity that we link, which is an education charity based out of California, but it has like US-wide activities and services. And that is on Cheshire Vic's channel. It's called Guns, Magic, and Steel, which, yes, is a play on Guns, Germs, and Steel. And I play a dwarf artificer. Bent here plays a halfling druid. And also it involves a lot of art from myself and Gutsick Gibbon. So if you like either of our art, there's plenty of it there. It also features Cheshire Vic as a Tabaxi rogue, Gutsick Gibbon as a imp rogue, TD Lane, who you might recognize from his channel, as a kobold barbarian, and Erica's fiance Luke as a Goliath fighter. So if you like D&D and you like YouTube and you like charity, check that out. I will let you guys know as soon as I know when the next session is going to be. Hopefully, it's not next week, but maybe we have one the week after, and then hopefully the week after that, so we get back to our regular rotation of which Mondays we do this. But anyway, that's it. Bent, do you have anything you want to announce?
And if you like fun, you should watch it
Yes.
because it's fun.
I agree.
There's a very small possibility that there could be a show in like 3 weeks for us.
Who's us?
I don't think it's gonna happen, but maybe
Who is us?
the band Melius
There you go.
to do a show.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm not thinking of anything else. Oh, Proto Feathers. Okay, so the video I did directly after getting the fundraising goal for Proto Feathers was Revenge of the Biddle 5. So unfortunately that means it'll be a while until you get to see them, but they are done. They are out there. I promise it is coming. The only thing that could prevent it from happening would be like my untimely death. So unfortunately it's probably going to be more than a month away because it's a 5-episode series. Sorry. And in that, I plan on having other things released, right? So like there's probably going to be another similar thing to the one I did about the fly wings with Dr. Dan. I have a paper on camel urine I want to do in a similar format. There's going to be at least 1 and probably 2 speculative evolution videos during that time, so it might end up being like 2 months from now. But anyway, I think that's it. I want to say thank you very much to everyone who came and watched. I want to say a special thank you to those of you who super chatted, Eric the Tyrannoceratops and Carrie Bronson. It really, really helps the channel out. And quite frankly, it wouldn't exist without the generous support of people who super chat, join the Patreon, and join the channel as channel members. So, and with that, I'm going to go to end credits so I can thank them by name. I just want to take a second to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 and above.
Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Ian Chen, Chris Love, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Res Instance.
My channel members and patrons help make this channel possible, and without their support, this channel really wouldn't exist. If you would like to help support the channel as a member or patron, there are links in the description to both join the channel as well as join the Patreon. Patrons and members get mentioned in these credit scenes, as well as getting early access to my scripted videos, and if you pledge $10 or above, you can also get access to various 3D assets that I create for Blender, both for use in the channel, as well as just general giveaways to my supporters to help in any Blender projects they might have. If a monthly or annual pledge isn't for you, then there is also a merch store linked to the description, and if none of that's right for you, please just like and subscribe because every like and subscription really helps the video out. Thank you.